म्हणजे ते स्पीकर आणून दे ना जरा. स्पीकर आणून दे ना. स्पीकर कर.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, DP.
Sir, you can start.
Okay, great. So DP, am I audible enough?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, great. So good morning all. I hope all of you are safe in your homes and would request you to stay safe. I'm aware these are a bit unprecedented times, but all of us are adapting to this new normal. I think shifting to the Zoom meeting for our presentation today is one of the new norm, I would say, which we are trying to adapt in this environment. So today we're going to talk about US FDA, one of the most important regulatory authorities in the world. And I'm sure if you're going through the newspapers or the news items on the websites, you would be hearing repeatedly regulatory authorities. US FDA is at the forefront of it. So we'll maybe for next 1.5 hours or so, we'll talk about this organization, how it got founded, what's the organogram, and, from the clinical research perspectives, what are the relevant guidelines from this particular organization. This is a bit unique. Generally, when I take sessions, I prefer to talk less and make others talk. I mean, the students participate more. Gonna try something similar over here, but cannot be in a place where you really share our thoughts that way. So can anyone let me know if they know anything about US FDA? I mean, any idea they have about this organization?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, actually, it is a regulatory body and it works on behalf of, I guess, US Department of Health and Human Services.
Great. May I know who's that?
Sir, Ashish.
Ashish, very right. Bang on.
And actually, they are responsible to ensure the safety of 4 things. One is the medicines, drugs, and vaccines, then veterinary product and cosmetics.
Very right, Ashish. Very right. They are responsible for these 4 primarily, and some of the other, but yes, these 4 primarily. Very right. Thank you so much, Ashish.
Welcome, sir.
I'm happy. I thought there may be some delay and technology glitch, but thank you so much for that. So, as Ashish rightly said, this is an organization which works for US government. This is an organization which takes decisions on the products which will get marketed in United States. And significance of this US FDA from Indian context, I would just say a couple of things. One of which is United States is one of the most lucrative markets for Indian pharmaceuticals. So most of the generic components in the US, they are from India. And I'm sure most of you would have seen a recent example. Can anyone just let me know any drug in the recent past where things came to that level where United States President has to request our Prime Minister, what was that drug?
HCQ
Bang on. May I know who was that?
and Veksha, sir.
Aksha, very right. Hydroxychloroquine. And of course, in addition to United States, 22 other countries have asked for it, and we have been able to supply that drug. One of the best services India as a country and Indian pharma industry as an industry is doing in these COVID times. So thanks, Anveksha, for that. So FDA is responsible for such kind of generic approvals, because of which it becomes imperative for us who will be working in the clinical research field, maybe directly into the operations or maybe into pharmacovigilance or medical writing. You will keep coming across this regulatory authority, because many of the guidances which we adopt primarily originate either from US or from Europe, or maybe a combination of both. So very important regulatory authority from that perspective. So this is a snapshot which I just took today morning, just to show you. This is the website of US FDA. I'm not going to always say US FDA. Henceforth, I'll referring to this as FDA. So please consider it that way only. You can see how relevant it is. The whole page talks only and only about COVID-19, and the way they have given a statement that they are working with government partners, Center for Disease Control, CDC, and international partners to address the pandemic. Uncertain times, so FDA and even other regulatory authorities in the world have kind of rose to the occasion, and they are handling it head on. They are expediting drug development, vaccine development. Some of you may be aware that in fact the phase 1 of the vaccine trial started in United States last month itself. Any other vaccine trial started very recently? Any idea? Can anybody share that?
Plasma therapy, maybe.
Plasma therapy, yes. Plasma therapy, even from Indian government perspective, the CDSCO, or the Drug Control General of India, DCGI, have given approval for convalescent plasma therapy clinical trial, and the trial have been initiated. Very recently, yesterday, one of the trial in University of Oxford for vaccine got initiated, and first healthy volunteer was dosed for a COVID-19 vaccine in United Kingdom. So the moral of the story, all the regulatory authorities are kind of responding so positively to this pandemic, and they are very well aware that they should not come across as bureaucratic organizations trying to obstruct vaccine or drug development, because this is truly a global problem, and they all are geared up, and FDA is one of those which is at the forefront. The second snapshot which I have picked up is from the press announcement. FDA on their website regularly carries press announcements, and as you can see, every day they are making it. Just yesterday itself, you can see there are 3, in fact more than that maybe, but the screenshot was able to only capture this. But the way they are capturing it, just see daily roundup. any updates. So they are doing regular updation of the information, because in people would be referring to these websites for authentic sources of information. Though most of us have become postgraduates in the WhatsApp University, we know very well that authentic sources of information are very important, especially for people who believe in science more than myths. Myths are there to entertain, but science would be there to substantiate and take the humanity forward. So I'm sure it goes without saying, but most of you would be referring to Ministry of Health of India website, WHO websites, Indian Council of Medical Research website, and in addition to that, if you want, you can also refer to US FDA and European Medicine Agency EMA websites for all the relevant and validated information, so that you don't have to depend on any news anchor getting hanky-panky over a particular problem in his or her own style. You can refer to these websites for more information, for authentic information. As we move forward, though FDA didn't start with the name as FDA, it got started as maybe a Department of Agriculture offshoot, and then slowly, the focus shifted to food. In fact, one of the incidences which happened was in the abattoirs in the early 20th century, and this is where, because of I would say food poisoning, the meat was not maintained properly, and there were many public health issues around that time. So FDA started evolving initially with the food. That's why it is Food and Drug Administration. So it started with food, and slowly it shifted from 1906 of Pure Food Act to then 1930s, where it actually became FDA. And in 1936 onwards, it started adopting its current kind of structure. Though, of course, there has been a lot of change. They keep adding new departments to their structure as science progresses, as the technology brings us newer avenues for drug development. I think Ashish touched base upon this. He said that these are those things which FDA looks after food, it looks after drugs, which we all are concerned. It looks after medical devices. Another very important aspect, radiation emitting products, which can be used primarily for X-ray technology or diagnostics, or at times even from the therapeutic perspective. Vaccines, biologics, even animal and veterinary foods, cosmetics, very important, because in India also we have Drugs and Cosmetic Act, which actually kind of gives us the Bible that how the drug development and even the continuation of the drug licensure should happen in India. Likewise, FDA also takes care of the cosmetics and tobacco products. Interestingly, some of you may have read in the recent past, we are yet not open for e-cigarettes, but US FDA kind of does give approval for some of them, of course, after adequate testing. And once the particular organizations have proved the benefits and safety of those products. So this is a huge canvas which the FDA operates. It's not only food and drugs, but as Ashish said, it can covers not many other things, including things like cosmetics. This is an organogram. Can anyone read the name of the commissioner for me?
So the Commissioner of Food and Drugs is Stephen M. Hearn, MD.
Correct. Who's that?
Ashish.
Yeah, Ashish, thanks for that. So yes, Stephen Hahn is the commissioner of FDA. So you may see him in some of the press conferences with the United States President. He would be there at the forefront, and of course he has a deputy. You can see different departments, and I would just take you through some of them. But at the same time, I would also if more and more people participate in this, in addition to Ashish and Veksha. So, which is this center where my cursor is?
Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I know some of you would be talking together, but I am fine with that. It at least gives me a comfort that you are listening and not watching any Netflix TV series right now. Great. Which is this one?
Center for Devices and Radiological Health.
Thank you so much. Would appreciate if you can just take your name also once you talk that.
Vidhi.
Thanks, Nadeem. Yeah. Which is this one?
Center for Drug Evaluation and Research.
Yep. Thanks for that. CDER, the abbreviation is one of the most important branch of USFDA, and you will be listening a lot about CDER as we go forward. Yeah. Which is this one?
Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition.
Was that?
Shweta.
Thanks, Shweta. Which is this one?
Tobacco products.
Yeah. Was that?
Tanya.
Thanks, Tanya. This one?
Veterinary Medicine.
That?
Shweta.
Shweta. This one?
Oncology Center of Excellence.
Was that?
Vineet.
Thanks, Vinit. This one?
Office of Regulatory Affairs.
Yeah. Was that?
Sumit, sir.
Thanks, Vinit. So, of course, I won't take you to the next level, but you can see these are the primary, I would say, offices of FDA. All of them are important. Center for Biologic Evaluation Research, which is CBER, CDER. These are the two primarily from the clinical research aspect are at the forefront. But having said that, others also like Center for Devices and Food Safety are as important. And as you can see, it has even a separate office for Office of Women's Health, and it has certain offices of operations policy. So this is the, I would say, brief organogram of USFDA with the commissioner sitting at the top and different offices under the FDA branch, which take care of different, I would say, drugs or devices or biologics. Moving to the next, this is just in detail what FDA covers up. As you can see, foods is not only food, but it includes supplements, even water, additives, infant formulas, and other food products. So drugs, all type of drugs, biologics, again, different biologics, including allergenics, which can be used for testing. This is important. Medical devices, it can be as simple as just tongue depressors to as complex as pacemakers. You can see the spectrum, the reach of the FDA operations. Even that ovens, equipment, to vapor lamps, to ultrasonic therapy, to veterinary products. We can see the smokeless tobacco or going forward the e-cigarettes is also under the ambit of USFDA. This is primarily the CDER, and this is how you can see the CDER's priority areas are. So yes, opioids is something where they are very, very cautious because opioids Some of you may be aware, though we look at them as the drug of abuse, are there any clinical indications where morphine or other opioids are used as drugs? Can anyone tell me?
Oncology.
Absolutely. Bang on. Because these are the best analgesics you can have. And unfortunately, in conditions like oncology, pain is really intractable and you need highest level analgesics. Having said that, for FDA, it becomes very important that they balance between use and abuse. And that is why they have a special focus on that. Tell me what exactly generics.
Hello.
Yep.
So question.
Can anyone tell me what is generics?
So generic medicine is a kind of medicine. मतलब जब सर ओरिजिनल का कॉपीराइट खत्म हो जाता है देन उसका पेटेंट लेकर के फॉरवर्ड यूज करते हैं.
बहुत अच्छी. Who was that?
आशीष.
Yeah, Ashish, thank you. So, very right. Generics are those where after the innovator loses the patent, the copycats can be there. But having said that, because of the generics, the affordability becomes easier, and Indian pharma is leading the generics market even in US. So it becomes very, very important. Even at times, you can challenge a patent if you feel that you have good enough data to challenge that, and you can have a generic of the same drug in the market even before the patent expiry if the FDA and court thinks it is appropriate. Yeah, they do give warning letters, especially in violations, and we'll come to that when we come to the inspection piece of the FDA. Primary focus of ours for today's discussion is going to be on guidances, but don't worry, not gonna bore you with the detailed guidances. We'll just rush through them. I would just like to show their names to you. These guidances are easily available and we will be handling them in this course on need basis. But also drug development tools and even expanded access and compassionate use. Can anyone tell me what do you mean by compassionate use?
As in the drug is offered to the patients for free or through some patient support program or patient assistance program, and this can also be used in where the drug is not or for rare like
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Bang on and very right because this is the objective. Some drugs may not be marketed. They may be in the clinical trial development phase, and that is where they may be provided on compassionate basis to the patients who probably have exhausted other options. So FDA does look into this from a humanitarian perspective. Yes, it also looks into the drug shortages and takes care of any of those issues. Having said that, when we go back to the warning letters or violations, any recent drugs which you feel FDA, especially US FDA, highlighted for some problems with their quality? Any idea?
Ranitidine.
Yeah, I lost the name. Yeah.
It was ranitidine and they have recalled it for impurities.
Absolutely, absolutely correct. Ranitidine, because of certain concerns over impurities in ranitidine, FDA has asked to withdraw, especially these molecule copies, and that's the latest information. Of course, it has been going on for the last 4 or 5 months, but FDA is now on top of it and I've asked to withdraw that. So thanks for sharing that. I'm happy that all of our students are very well updated with the latest information. This is something which I just wanted to show you. This is more of a search engine. You can actually go and type into the search engine any drug and you will get the whole Kundali or biodata of the drug. If it is approved in US, you will get to see the brand name, you will get to see the label of the drug, you will also get to see the submission documents of the drug. So this is kind of a treasure. And most of us in the industry, if you want to have some more information about a particular drug, more from the authentic sources, we actually go and go and look at drugs at the rate FDA, and that is where we get a lot of information. So very important search engine. I would just request you, whenever you have time, you can just test it. I have just exported an Excel of the FDA. They have, in fact, 40 odd guidances on the clinical trials from the CDER. As I told you, I have kind of segregated them in the subsequent slides, but just want to show you the architecture of theirs. As you can see, can anyone read the first one for me? The title of that?
FDA guidance on conduct of clinical trials of medical.
The final document. It is not even draft. They see, they are aware that it's not that we are handling COVID-19 in isolation. There are certain things which are ongoing. One of them is clinical trial, but it will have an impact on it because of lockdowns and also because of certain other challenges on the healthcare as a whole, reallocation of the resources for fighting COVID-19. So FDA is very well aware that there may be challenges in the conduct of clinical trials. So see their promptness. They have come out with a guideline that how do you manage the clinical trial during COVID-19 emergency. They have given a guidance for industry. This clearly shows how they are on the top of the game and how they are kind of receptive to the challenges which come with these kind of uncertain situations. So the others are more, I would say, straightforward, like inclusion of older adults in cancer clinical trials, or you can see maybe the fourth one is adaptive design of clinical trials, which was earlier a draft but became final at the end of the last year, because you would have seen, and all of you are aware, the US uses MMDDYY kind of a date template. So as we go further, can anyone read slide for me?
Clinical trial guidance documents, general information sheet guidance, drugs and biologic information sheet guidance, medical device information sheet guidance, FDA operations information sheet guidance, general guidance documents.
Great, thank you. Who was that?
Shweta.
Thanks, Shweta. So thanks, Shweta. Yes, these are the 5, I would say, broad subjects on which they have given guidelines. And then, of course, there are some further. Who can read this slide for me?
Clinical trials guidance documents. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Institutional review boards, IRBs, and informed consent guidance documents. Drugs and biologics guidance documents. Medical devices guidance documents. Electronic data guidance documents, and manufacturing requirements for investigational products guidance documents.
Thanks. Thank you so much for that. So as you can see, these are broad subjects on which the FDA, CDER primarily has given a guideline on the clinical trial. And again, I'm not gonna ask each one of you to read these, but you can just have a look at it, and you can understand the different general information guidelines they have given, like charging for IP information, cooperative research where more than one organization can come together. Are there any exceptions in the informed consent requirements for emergency research? What about acceptance of foreign clinical study data, informed consents, IRBs, non-local IRBs, and you can see even off-label important. Any one of you share it? I'll repeat the question. Why do you think something like payment to research subject is an important guideline for FDA?
To avoid any undue influence.
Absolutely, absolutely. To avoid so that it should not happen that the research subjects are either being coerced or being lured into participating into a clinical trial. Whatever they are getting paid has to be just, and it should not go beyond certain norm where it can get into inducement. So thanks for that. Was that Ashish?
No, sir. Vineet.
Yeah, Vinit. So thank you so much.
Welcome.
So perfect, Vinit. That's the right objective of this particular guideline. Yeah. Drugs and biologics information sheet guidance. Can anyone give me any example of biologics? What do you mean by biologics?
Product
Body
which
fluids.
From a living organism.
Yeah, so I heard two voices, and I think both of you are right. Products made from living organisms, very important, and they can be range of biologics. There can be recombinant DNA products like insulins and all to vaccines and even. Can anyone tell me which is from the revenue aspect, which is the number one drug in the world right now? Any idea? Any guess?
Is it insulin?
Logically, yeah, because insulin is very, very commonly used, but as the prices have come down, it is not there, but it is there in top 10. One of the insulin analog, Lantus, is there in top 10. But this particular drug is not insulin. But you got the question, yeah. Any other guess?
Metformin.
Metformin.
Again, logical guess because diabetes is a very common chronic disease. But metformin again is genericized. So revenue aspect, it is not that much, but yes, volume aspect, metformin is one of the highly used drugs in the top category. From the revenue aspect,
antibiotics?
Again, antibiotics are used for shorter duration, so they may not be earning that much revenue. Any other guesses?
Hi sir, I'll again go with HCQ, maybe because of current scenario.
Yeah, but Anveksha, maybe HCQ, one challenge would be because it is a genericized product and it is still only used primarily in countries like ours, though its use is there very much primarily for malaria and to some extent for diabetes. But from the revenue aspect, it is not yet causing that buzz. But yeah, from the public health aspect, you are very much correct. But any other guesses?
Is it an oncology drug?
or HIV drug? Is it paracetamol?
Paracetamol, again, very right in terms of the usage volume, which is there, but no, it won't be.
Monoclonal antibodies?
Yeah, you are there, but I need a very specific answer. You are there, and that was the objective of asking the question. But the good part is all of you are participating, so I am feeling happy because it is very difficult to look at the laptop and talk when you are taking a class. So monoclonal antibody, which one?
I don't know specifically.
No worries, but you are there, and that was precisely the reason I asked. Adalimumab by the brand name Humira from AbbVie. It is that monoclonal antibody, which is in fact the last year revenue was $19 billion. You can see the revenue. The reason why I asked this question, I think, who said that monoclonal antibodies?
Sushmita.
Sushmita, yeah, and you actually gave the context very clearly. Currently, out of the top 10 drugs with the highest revenue, almost 4 to 5 are biologics. The reason why I asked that question was because as we are evolving in terms of our research, science, and technology, we are getting into more and more therapeutic, on-target kind of drugs or personalized medicines, and this is where we are getting into biologics more and more deep. So, as Sushmita said, we are developing more and more monoclonal antibodies, which are target-oriented drugs, go and attack a particular target only from the disease aspect. And this is where it is helping us control some of the diseases which will maybe not well controlled in the past. And this is where biologics is now standing shoulder to shoulder with drugs. And maybe as more and more research happens down the line, biologics may overtake even conventional drugs. Though the place of oral drugs and injectables would always be there, but we are now getting into more and more on target or direct kind of medications, which will give us cures without dangerous side effects. Having said that, monoclonal antibodies, they do carry certain side effects because we are still refining them, but their actions are pretty good in terms of the therapeutic benefits. So medical devices, can anyone give me any example of medical device?
Respirators.
Respirators, yeah, very much. Inhalers, yeah. Any therapeutic medical device?
Automatic BP monitoring machine.
Yeah, it is
Pacemaker.
also pacemaker. Yeah, exactly. So pacemaker is a therapeutic example. Yes, BP monitoring device is also a medical device. Bang on. So we have therapeutic like pacemakers, knee implants, hip implants, which we know of, cardiac stents. These are therapeutic devices. And then there are diagnostic devices like BP monitors or even others, wherein we use them pulse oximeters and all those kind of things, which we use primarily for either diagnosis or monitoring. So the FDA gives guidance on these kind of things also. Then even FDA goes beyond that because, as I said, it's a quasi-regulatory kind of a body. They do conduct inspections, and their inspections are no less than an FBI kind of inspection. So I've experienced some of the FDA inspections, and those good kind of FBI during those inspections. They exactly do that way. Maybe I think during their training only they are shown multiple Hollywood movies, and that is how they operate when they come for inspection. Very straight face. They always look at you that you have committed an error unless proved otherwise. So that is how interesting it can get, and we are going to go to the inspection section. I have added a few slides over that, but they do give guidelines so that anyone and everyone who is going to undergo inspection from FDA can actually refer to those guidelines and understand the kind of preparation they need to make for an FDA inspection. Then there are some general guidance document which they give for different type of individual final disclosure by a clinical investigator. We'll see this form subsequently. One of the other interesting things which I have my cursor on, you can see is PRO, patient reported outcomes. That is something which is coming up very recently, and FDA is very keen to understand more than as much as doctors what patients feel about particular treatment, especially patients of chronic diseases, because these are diseases like diabetes and arthritis and all. They don't go away. Patient have to live with them, have to take medicines for long. So going beyond the clinical benefit, are the patients also happy with the treatment? That is something which is being now also tested as importantly. Then IRB's document, I'm sure there would be on IRB responsibilities and ICF, so I wouldn't take much of your time on that, but these are coming primarily from this table of FDA. Then drugs and biological guidance, the BAP will have a separate session on, and likewise based exploratory IND. Can anyone do IND? Yeah, anyone for the full form of IND?
Investigational new drug.
Absolutely correct. Thank you so much. Yeah. So even you can see guidelines like gender differences, good pharmacovigilance practices, and all. See, you don't have to remember all these guidelines. So please be rest assured. You have to just have a look at them and you have to just know the buckets under which they come. Do not worry at all. No one in the world, including those working in the FDA, know all these guidelines. So don't worry at all. They are available at the tip of the finger. Only thing is you should know where to look at it. That is important. Medical devices documents, as you can see, humanitarian use device and all. So these are those important things, and even something like as tech savvy as software validation, you can see. So because as we are moving into the tech era, many clinical data is getting shifted into the eCRFs and all. So many softwares are being used not only for data management but also for many other purposes. But they also need to get validated, and FDA even gives guidelines for them. You can see electronic that is for which are getting into the film, and also 2 and 3
Sir, we are not able to hear, sir.
So your voice is breaking.
Sorry. Is it clear?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Just let me get my internet. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So from the manufacturing requirement, as you can see, the CGMP or the medical devices requirement for manufacturing are given very clearly in terms of the manufacturing requirement from FDA. This is a compliance program manual, and this particular manual talks about, this particular manual talks about what the FDA would be looking at when they would ask for certain informations, and what the particular organizations have to be ready with. So this CPGM is kind of a document which you can refer for any FDA activities, just to ensure that whatever you are doing is right. And that's why it becomes very, very important. We'll see some of them. Form
So you are not audible.
Very important.
It's too much breaking.
Is it good?
So your voice is breaking. You're not getting your voice.
Just a minute. Yeah. So is it okay now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So FDA Form 483. Now this is something which can ring a bell for those who have heard about FDA inspection. Form 483 is considered as a very dreadful thing, because when FDA inspection is going to happen, many consultants tell you that just pray that you should not get Form 483, because Form 483 is kind of I would not say warning, but it's kind of a document which actually is given at the end of an inspection by the FDA inspector, wherein they say that what kind of violation have in that for this discuss with the management of that particular company, and the companies are encouraged to respond to 483 with the corrective action plan. So one important thing which all of you should be aware is 483 is not to be worried about, because anytime you undergo USFDA inspection, there is high likelihood that some of the activities which you have done, FDA may have a different perspective. But as long as you have not manipulated things, or as long as you have not done anything wrong, FDA would be absolutely fine to listen to your perspective. So 483 is more of a form where they want more information about why a particular thing happened in that particular way. That is how they will be looking at it. This is Form 1572, another important document from FDA, which I just wanted to highlight to you. This is the mandatory form which every investigator has to fill when he is undergoing a clinical trial, which is being submitted to USFDA. This particular form not only gives the details of that doctor, but also gives the financial disclosure. Like the doctor is going to have the participation in that particular study, going to get the research honorarium, but are there any other conflicts of interest also? So this becomes a very, very important form from FDA perspective. Now this is FDA inspection sites, and some of the causes where the FDA can come and inspect. I have just highlighted them. I have taken this from a PowerPoint of one of the FDA inspectors presentation. So can someone read at least 2 or 3 of these reasons for FDA inspection for me?
To verify the accuracy and reliability of data that has been submitted to the agency.
Yes.
As a result of a complaint to the agency about the conduct of the study at a particular investigational site in response to sponsor concerns, upon termination of the clinical site, during ongoing clinical trial to provide the real-time assessment of the investigator, conduct of clinical of the trial, and protection of human subjects at the request of an FDA review division, and related to certain classes of investigational products that FDA has identified as products of special interest in its current work plan, that is targeted inspection based on current public health concerns.
Yeah. Thanks, Pranav, for that. Yep. So very right, and as you can see, all encompassing causes. It can be just to verify the accuracy of the data, to as much as maybe certain special interest products are being tested, and FDA would just like to have the look at it. Then FDA can also see that who has actually done what particular aspect of that particular study, whether the review board IRB had approved the protocol, whether all the SOPs and protocol requirements were followed up, whether the investigator disclosed the information, whether the informed consent documents were signed by subject, or maybe the legally acceptable. So you just credibility. This is sides, even the hospitals to come and inspect and check the data, and that becomes a very, very learning exercise for those who face the FDA inspection. What are the common causes for which you can get 483? So can anyone read? You don't have to read the 21 CFR kind of things, but you can just read the important. Yeah, go ahead.
Non-compliance.
Absolutely, non-compliance. Yep. So failure to follow the investigational plan, protocol deviations, inadequate record keeping, accountability of IP. Can someone explain me what do you mean by accountability of investigational product?
Keeping a log of the products that are shipped to the site and to the patients.
Yes,
Documents.
Vinit, very right.
Yes.
Yeah, Vinit, very right. If you have, for example, given 400 vials to a particular site, the site should have all the record of 400 vials. Like as Vinit said, a log wherein you have mentioned the details of each vial, to whom it was given, or if there are any unused vials, then the records of all of that. And last but not the least, inadequate subject protection, including any informed consent issues. Any example of any informed consent issue can or sorry, I didn't hear that.
So please repeat the question.
Can anyone give me any example of FDA's concern on informed consent issue?
If a trial patient is uneducated and witness is not used, FDA might question.
Absolutely, Anveksha. Yeah, that is one very good example. That can be an issue for FDA. Any other thing? At times, FDA also gets curious to know if the informed consent was signed in a particular language, which perhaps is not the local language. They would like to know who from the investigator team was able to explain that informed consent to the subject. That becomes sometimes a very important issue to understand. They just want to ensure that it was not that only the form was given to the subject, because when we say informed consent, it is both. I mean, as a site coordinator, you have to explain all the information which is there in the informed consent form, and of course, then give time to the subject to read it and take a decision. So at times, FDA team gets curious to know who from the investigator team explained a particular language's form to that individual. So that can be another concern. Now just see, this is another graph which clearly talks about what they have across in terms of certain concerns where they have given 483s, and you can see the common reason by far is the issues at the investigator site. Then you also have issues with the bioequivalence, which is in the blue bar, and then certain issues with sponsors, certain issues with IRBs. But you can see by far the issues at the site, they actually overtake anyone else. And this is where Office of Special Scientific Investigations, they just get more and more their findings from their inspections. This I think all of you are to guide to wherein they emphasize that the sole person responsible for welfare, safety of the study subject. Of course, will ensure the rights and the safety also, but investigator is someone who will be very, very important in decision making, considering he or she is a medically qualified person and is well aware of how to treat these subjects if unfortunately things go wrong. Exploratory and just like it is also by some other regulatory authorities. Any guesses?
So you are not audible. Can you please repeat?
Any guess on what exploratory is called? Information on
Sir, unable to hear you.
Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, is that okay now?
Yes.
Yeah. So, any idea on exploratory and first phase of the human of the Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. There was some internet issue at my place. I was talking about exploratory IND. What is the first phase of human clinical trials?
To check the safety of the drug.
Correct. Exactly. And that is phase 1, right?
Phase
Yes.
1, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Why I asked that question was, have you heard about anything like phase 0?
Yes,
microdosing.
it's microdosing.
Preclinical studies.
Yeah. So preclinical, I would not say is right. Preclinical, when we say it is animal studies. So microdosing, yes, very much there, and that is something which, of course,
तू थोडंसं खात असतो अशी
exploratory
काय
IND, FDA considers.
कमी खाल्ल्याने पण
I can
ऍसिडिटी होते.
I can hear some background noise. Okay, so this microdosing, yes, very much there. So what FDA does is, and the whole concept of phase 0 is to optimize the drug development primarily from the cost perspective. Will be MOA is being in the
Sir, you're not
meetings,
audible.
the information from whether this is certainly my Wi-Fi is something. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that is the exploratory IND. So FDA has been very open to discuss with the companies for such a kind of approach. And as you can see over here, they give the pathway that how a particular sponsor can
Sir, we are not able to hear, sir.
for so okay, am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is the formula which they have given primarily to calculate the dose. But again, don't worry, you don't have to remember this formula. I just wanted to show it to you primarily for making you understand that only the regulatory guidances which FDA gives, but they also are very open to cooperate with pharmaceutical industry to optimize the drug development cost. That is the whole objective of phase 0 studies, so that companies will not waste too much of their money and will be able to utilize their money in the right drug development. Biosimilars, so sorry, there are some typos over here. 58, 859, 860, these are actually the superscripts, but while copy pasting, they all have come up. Biosimilars, as all of you may be aware, these are the generics of biological products, if I put it simply. All these monoclonal antibodies as well as other biological drugs like insulins and all, when they are nearing the expiry of the patent, the other companies start working on their copies, and these are called as biosimilars. They're very important primarily from pricing perspective, and that is where FDA is very keen to have a right pricing for the biosimilars, and so that the government doesn't have to pay too much from the pockets of theirs. They have given many guidelines on that. And as you can see, I've just taken a snapshot of the very recent guidelines, as recent as 6th of April, where they have spoken about what are the interchangeable biosimilars. So when you say interchangeable is, if I'm taking a particular biosimilar or original biological drug, can I take the other drug as effectively? So FDA even goes to that extent to clarify that how a particular will be called as interchangeable product. These are some of the other guidelines for biosimilars, where you can see they are even encouraging industry to come ahead and have formal meetings with FDA to understand what are the nuances of biosimilar development, and they will be more than happy to support the biosimilars. Even Q&A also they have given, so industry representatives can actually refer to Q&A document of FDA and get an idea from them. Then some of the other guidances like statistical approaches, and very interesting is the naming of the biological product, because they are very clear that it is, as it is a biosimilar, it should not have the same name as the original product, and they have given a nomenclature guidance for that. So can someone read me for the proposed suffix thing? Can someone read it part for me?
The proposed suffix should be unique, be devoid of meaning, be 4 lowercase letters of which at least 3 are distinct, be non-proprietary, be attached to the core name with a hyphen, be free of legal barriers that would restrict its usage.
Thank you. Thanks. So very important. So for example, if there is a trastuzumab, the brand name of that is Herceptin from Roche. Now that monoclonal antibody, if there is any biosimilar for that, it will also not call itself as trastuzumab. It will have to have a suffix, and these should be the characteristics of that suffix which FDA has given, so that patients as well as doctors are able to differentiate between an original biological and a biosimilar. So this is how the nomenclature guidelines have been given. You may be curious why it is so when the similar kind of guideline is not given for generic products. Interestingly, as you may see, many of the leading pharma companies in the world, many of them are from US. So many of the original biological products are also from the US. So FDA is just trying to do a balancing exercise. They just don't want these original or innovator companies to feel that they have been sidelined. So they are kind of giving a different nomenclature for biosimilar, so that they are neither restricting the entry of biosimilar, but at the same time they are also not equating it with a kind of generic copy of an oral to exactly copy of either. That's why FDA exercise. Now these are some of the references of the documents or the guidelines which you can refer to, the clinical trials and biosimilars. And that's about it for the US FDA. I hope that was useful to all of you. Feel free to ask any questions. Okay, so I think that was about the US FDA in terms of the regulatory authority. We saw the history of the organization. Then we had a look at the organogram. We went to the individual departments, and then we focused largely on the clinical trial aspects and the different guidelines which have been given for clinical trials. Also, how do FDA and why do they carry inspections? What kind of common observations they come across? And what is their take on the biosimilars? These are some which we are not saying in the last more than 1 hour, 15-20 minutes. We can cover all the FDA thing because it is too vast a topic. But having said that, I just wanted to give you a glimpse of what US FDA is all about, and we can always go into the details when we visit the website and check for some of the very specific information. But whenever you get time, you can actually visit this website. As I told you, for press announcements and all, you will get to also understand, because all the new drugs which are approved by FDA, they give press announcements. So that is how I generally do. Every day I see their website. I get to know which is the new drug approved by US FDA for the particular indication. So you get to enrich your knowledge, and you also get to stay updated from that. So that's about it. So thank you very much, all of you. Apologies for some of the technical glitches in between, but I hope this was a useful lecture for all of you. So thank you, and stay safe and stay happy. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.